Alright, so we have in front of us right here a standard 98 Custom Platinum series. Does not have the ACT installed inside of it. So what we're going to do is install the ACT kit, which you can see right here. So you're going to get this as a kit. You're going to get your new rear bolt or striker, whatever you want to call it, your main drive spring, your linkage arm, your bumper, these two pins, which I'm pretty sure already are inside of here, but you get them in the kit anyway, just in case they aren't. Your front ACT spring, rear ACT spring, your spring pin, and then the little cup that this goes inside of. So these are all your kit pieces that you'll need to install it. Once we have it together inside, it's going to look something like this. The small spring goes on the rear, and we're going to push that small spring all the way up onto this little gap right here. There is no side to this. You can have this either way. It does not matter which way this goes, but this is going to go all the way. And make sure you push it all the way up to the little ring at the front. Long spring goes in the front. This goes over like that. We've got this linkage arm where our long section is going to go towards the front of the gun in here, and then this rear section is going to go back here. This goes inside here. If you look really closely at the end of this piece right here, you can see that it's got a bit of a taper to it. We want to make sure that that fits properly against the arm. We don't want it rotated around. There's a little groove cut in it so that it fits right on there, nice and flush. So we want to make sure that that goes on there. So that's going to go inside like that. That's going to go in like this. And that's going to sit inside of our gun. Kind of in the way of everything with my hand here like that. This is going to go into the rear section of the cap. Our drive spring is going to go underneath it. And then our bumper is going to go around our drive spring right there. So let's go ahead and pull everything apart again, and then we'll put it all back together. So let's get the gun disassembled first. So we don't need our barrel. We're going to get rid of that. We're going to go around the outside. We're going to loosen everything up. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get everything started by hand, and then I'll probably go in with a small little power screwdriver and take these all the way up. Let's see if we got any juice left in this thing. Oh, it sounds like she's about to die, but that's all right. I think we can get far enough. All right, so those are loose all the way out. One other thing I like to do with this setup when I'm taking the halves off right here is I like to undo the screws that hold the ASA in place. I'm not going to take them all the way out. I just like to loosen those up so that this has a little bit of movement to it. Sometimes, if you leave it tight, when you go to try to take this half off, these two screws, because they're forcing the ASA up against the frame, it doesn't like to let go. So we're gonna let it let go. We're gonna make it let go, I guess is what I'm getting at. All right, so I'm gonna take this out of here. I'm gonna remember that that screw goes through that part right there. All these other screws, as long as they're all the way out of their nut on the other side, you can usually just leave them inside there. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I could loosen this up. I'm going to see if I can pop this piece off right now without having to loosen up anything else. I am going to take just a little flathead, and I'm going to put it in the little gap right here between the bodies, and I'm going to try to just give it a little pry up to see if I can bring that up and out. Sometimes you can get these to come apart all like that. See, I got that right there. Now I'm going to just kind of work my way around it and try to get everything out. What I don't want to do is just lift this thing up real quick, because the spring and rear bolt, which is in here, if you just yank it up real fast, things will go shooting everywhere. As you can see on the back side right here, I've started to separate my two pieces, but the back cap has stayed inside this left half right here. And if I just lifted it up, this thing would want to shoot out of there because it's stuck over there. So I'm going to bring this cap back over to the other side. And now it's sitting in the right half right here. And that's kind of where I want to leave it, because I want to keep all my parts in the right half for now. And when I'm referring to the right half, if I put this up, left half, right half. You see one of the nuts fell out from the other side. That's pretty normal. So I'm going to hold on to this pin. I'm going to push it down, and so I can lift this up and make sure that everything stays over there. Now I can see a bunch of stuff came out. My sear stayed in the other side, because I see my sear spring right here.
Hello, Roman.
So I'm taking these pieces out. I'm just going to put these screws up here for now. Normally I'd like to keep the screws inside there, but it doesn't really matter. They're all the same length. This will make it easier for me to turn this over and show you guys what stayed inside of here. So my sear stayed inside, my pin stayed inside. I'm going to take this pin out and try to wiggle it out if I can, and I'm going to put it back where it came from, right there. Don't want to lose my sear spring, and then my sear pins.
The blue one.
So I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it back in here. If you look at this little cap that's on here, this cap has basically a semicircle on one side and then a flat spot on the other side. And both of these caps are like that. If you don't recognize that when you go to put this together, you will smash these caps because they're just plastic, and those caps will grab onto the sear and it won't let the sear move properly up and down. What that can cause is you try to cock the gun back, and the sear won't catch because the sear is being smashed by the plastic pieces, and it gets smashed down and it never comes up and catches. So make sure when we go to reassemble this, that these caps, you can see that the flat side's here and this is all round, and the spot that it fits in fits this shape perfectly. It's got a rounded area and then a flat area so that it drops right down in place right there. It fits perfect into this spot right here. Now I'm trying to take that off, and I'm going to put that pin back in place right there. All right. Now on the other half, I'm going to take that and I'm going to put this back in the other side as well. That way when I go to put these together, everything lines up. That's something I could have done at the end, but I want to show you guys as we pull it apart the issues that you can run into as you're taking it apart. We can drop our sear back in, then we can put that back in there. So we're going to leave that as it is right now. Our front spring, this is our trigger spring, is still in the right spot. It hasn't gone anywhere, so that's all good. So we can leave all this alone. Now we're going to take this front piece off right here and pull that off. You cannot take this, well, I'm going to rephrase that. It's really hard to get this front part off without taking this off. So I wouldn't even recommend trying. If you want to get this front half off, take this off first and then take this off. And now here we are. So here is basically our meat and potatoes that we're going to switch out. This stays the same. This stays the same. This gets switched. This stays the same. This switch. Pin stays the same. If you see inside here, the two pins that are set inside right here, these are the same two pins that I have right here. So in this particular gun, these are not needed. Or these two, I should say, are not needed. They give them to you because I have seen guns that come where these holes don't have anything in them, and then you would need to put them in. So if you open up your gun and there's just two holes staring at you right here, that's where these two pins are going to go. But seeing as though we don't need them, we're just going to move them off to the side because those pins are in there. So let's get these parts out. I'm going to grab the back and pull that up. Remember, the spring is under tension when this is compressed forward, so be prepared for it to want to push. We're going to take that out. We are going to use our drive nail again. That's going to go in our main spring, but we can set that spring off to the side. If we look at our cap on the back, the center hole is where this is going to go, like that. And then you see that there's a hole that is offset from all the other holes. It's higher up than all the other ones. This hole is where the spring system for our ACT is going to go. So there we go. That's going to go together like that. All right, so let's get that out. We're going to use this bumper when we put this all together, because this is going to get away in the way of the spring that's up top now. So we don't want that in the way of this spring assembly in that top hole. So we need to use a smaller bumper that won't get in the way of that. So you can't reuse the old one. That's why you get the new bumper right there. This can come out of here and come up here. This we're going to just kind of rotate up. We'll pull our old linkage arm out. We'll pull our old rear bolt out. In our rear bolt, there's a piece on the inside which we want to remove. That's going to go into our new rear bolt, as well as the O-ring that's on here. We're going to take that O-ring off, and we're going to put that on our new one right here. All right, so once we have that on our new rear bolt, take our insert. Oh hey, you don't need that anymore. Look at that, they machined this smaller. See the difference in hole size right there? So that no longer goes in there. You won't need it. Now that can just go over there to the side. All right, so that makes that way more simple. This is going to go back in here. You can see that there's a hole in it. So when that goes in there, that allows the spring to pass through this right here. So when you put this in and we're ready to put the spring in the back, you have to line that hole up with the back right there so that the spring can pass through. If the hole isn't lined up, then the spring can't get in there. Make sure it's lined up properly, like that. All right, so let's put this back down right here. We're gonna let's do this part first. So we'll get this, and this, and this, and this in here, like this, like this. Once we have all these pieces together, we'll hook up the front bolt right here. We're gonna push this in like that so that it goes through there. And we've made sure that what we talked about earlier, the little notch, or the way the front of this plastic cap is cut, fits up against the linkage arm flushly. All right, so now we've got that together, and remember, long spring goes in the front, short spring goes in the back. We can take our caulking knob, put that in, and remember lining up the hole with the back so that that can pass right on through and into there. We're going to take our bumper, put it around this one only. It does not go around this. We're going to take this spring, we're going to put it in the top hole like that. Then our drive nail and spring goes in the bottom hole. And then we push it together. One thing I will remind you is on your cap, there's a notch on the top of the cap. The notch goes up against this section right here. There's a cutout right, I don't know if you can see me wiggling my finger at that, a notch cut out right here so that this little notch can fit up against there. And when you put the two halves together, it fits normally inside. If you don't, well, you can't put it in wrong, I guess, because in order for this spring to fit properly, that hole has to be lined vertically. And if you don't, then it doesn't go together. So there we go. There we got it together. I'm going to bring that spring forward. I'm going to bring that forward a little bit further. Try to make sure all my springs are in the right spot. There we go. So that fits. You can see how that sits underneath the spring. Before, if this was in there, it wouldn't fit right and it would be in the way of that spring. So you got to use that smaller one. Our linkage arm is in there. It's hooked up. Everything is good. We didn't need to mess around with this at all. While I was playing around with this, you can see our detent popped out. So we want to make sure our detent goes back in the right way, which is always like this. Okay, so the ramp of the detent, which is this part, this ramp right here, always needs to sit under the bolt facing, or the top of the ramp should be facing out the gun. If we have the top of the ramp here facing towards the inside of the gun, when the bolt slides backwards like this and the ball drops in, it's going to want to push that ball forward. And then when the bolt comes back forward, when you pull the trigger and everything goes forward, the bolt is going to clip this and it's going to cut it off, whoosh, like that. If it's the proper way, when the bolt comes back, this thing pops up and it keeps the ball in one spot so that more than one ball cannot load into the gun. And then when the bolt comes forward, it just pushes it down. And then when the bolt retracts, it pops back up. So that should always look like that. All right. Last thing we want to put in here is our sear spring. So I'm going to start with putting it on the sear. And then I'm going to push or compress it down and clip it into its housing right here. Now all of these pieces, the spring, this spring, these springs, they got a mind of their own. They're going to want to jump and move and things like that. So we want to make sure that everything is pushed down and set before we try to put this other half on. Because once we put the other half on, we can't see anything that's going on inside of here. So we're just going to have to assume that it's good. We're going to take our front half. It needs to go on first. So I'm going to put this on. Everything looks okie dokie in there. Now this is the part where you might want to do that. I mean, you really don't have to. Because this is, you know, being held in right here, it kind of wants to push against this piece, and it doesn't want to let this top part sit down. But once we go start putting all our screws in, it'll go into place. But if you really wanted to have this sit flush and nice while you're trying to reassemble it, you could loosen this up a little bit. You don't have to, but you can if you want to. Now I'm going to take my other half, I'm going to flip it over, I'm going to put that on. I'm just kind of eyeballing all my parts right now, all my spacing and my parts, just to make sure that that will fit, and it looks like it will. Everything looks good. One thing which I did right here, which I did on purpose because I wanted to show you guys what will happen when you go to start assembling things back together, is you'll forget parts. This part needs to go in, and it needs to go in right here. But because of these two pins right here, you can't put that in when this is already together. So we're going to pop it apart real quick and put it back in. But you will do this just like I did it. This will be forgotten, and then you'll have to take it all apart again. So hopefully you're not watching this as I'm doing it, or trying to follow along and do this as I'm doing it. Sometimes you can just kind of give it a little lift, and you might be able to get it in there. There we go. All right, so now we can start putting our screws back together, and hopefully it all works. And we're going to test it once we've got it back together. So screws, screws, screws. Remember, one of our nuts fell out the other side, so one of these screws, as we try to screw it together, won't go in. But that's okay. We'll figure out which one it is. Kind of want to just get everything buttoned down right now. It's that one right there. That one doesn't want to tighten, so I know that that nut is not in there. But I don't want to turn the gun over until all my screws are in. That way nothing falls out. So now we can go ahead and put that nut back in, and I'm going to hold that one in place as I screw this together. All right, now I'm going to go back around and just give everything a tighten up. Woo! And I'm just going to where I feel the resistance. I'm not overdoing it. And then we can tighten up these bottom two as well. Sometimes, if you over tighten this screw at the top right here, your feed neck release won't work. It'll pinch it so hard that this won't want to move back and forth. Luckily, we didn't over tighten it, so that easily still will unlock our release right there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to test the ACT to make sure that it's functioning properly. You can see our bolt is inside here, and as I'm cocking the gun back, right there, the bolt is moving back and forth. So when I cock the gun back, all the way back, the bolt opens up, a ball would fall in. The detent, which we talked about earlier, holds the ball in place. You pull the trigger, bolt comes forward, ball shoots out. Now what the ACT does is, let's say a bolt, or a ball was only halfway down into the breech. It hadn't made it all the way down in here. It was in the middle, and you pulled the trigger. With the old setup, when the hammer moves forward, because it's linked to the bolt, it's going to push that bolt through the ball and cut it in half and cause a break. And then you got paint mess all inside of here. So the ACT, if we've installed it properly, let me try this right here. If I pull the trigger right now, the hammer, which is here, should come all the way forward, but the bolt will stay back. Just like that. You can see the bolt has stayed back, but my hammer is all the way forward. If I pull this out, the bolt goes the rest of the way forward, but the hammer stays in one spot. I can do this with my finger now. I always test it once to make sure that nothing is, that I didn't put it together wrong. But now I can put my finger in here. I can pull it over, pull the trigger, the gun goes forward. I'm pushing this all the way forward, my finger's still in there, but the bolt is not sliding forward. And that is how the ACT or anti-chop technology works. That extra little spring on the top allows the hammer to come forward, and that linkage arm can slip up off the hammer and compress with that extra set of spring up there, rather than just being smashed through the ball and causing a break at the end of the gun. So that's the way to test it. You pull that back and then put something in there, something that isn't going to damage anything. You know, use a pen or something. And you can see. Nicey nice. So that's it. The install is not difficult. Take your time, put it in there. If you have a Platinum Series 98 Custom that does not have the ACT in it, I definitely recommend you pick up that ACT upgrade. It'll dramatically cut down on breaks and chops, just because now you have a way to not force the ball or the bolt through a ball. That's it. Hope this helped you guys. See you in the next one.